Good morning. The committee will come to order. Today, our committee will consider the fiscal year 2024 appropriations bill recommended by the subcommittee on the legislative branch, the fiscal year 2024 appropriations bill recommended by the subcommittee on commerce, justice, science, and related agencies, and the fiscal year 2024 appropriations bill recommended by the subcommittee on financial services and general government. I'm going to start us off today with some opening remarks on the three strong bills that we have before us today, and then the Vice Chair will give her opening remarks. Senator Collins will make the usual and customary motion to vote on final passage of the bills, and I intend to have those three votes promptly at 11:20 today. There are a number of other committees holding executive sessions this morning, so I ask everyone to be here at that time so we can have full attendance for those votes, and then members can get to where they need to be. Following those three votes, we will move to the consideration of amendments to the three bills. We had a very productive markup at the end of June, and I'm so glad to keep that momentum going here today. Vice Chair Collins and I agreed at the start of this Congress that it was important to return to regular order and work together to find common ground, produce serious spending bills that move our country forward, and ensure the Senate's voice is heard loud and clear in the appropriations process. We have an obligation to keep this process moving, and we are determined to show the American people Congress can work in a responsible, timely, bipartisan way to pass our funding bills that make their lives better and get our government and our communities the resources they need to keep our nation safe and competitive. And the overwhelming feedback I've heard from members on and off this committee is they want the same thing. So far, we have made good progress and at a good pace. I'm grateful to all the subcommittee leaders and staff for the work they did to hold over 40 hearings this spring, and the work happening now to craft the strongest possible funding bills under difficult circumstances. Before the recess, this committee considered and passed two strong spending bills, the Military Construction, Veterans Affairs, and Related Agencies bills, and the Agriculture, Rural Development, Food and Drug Administration, and Related Agencies bill. And what's more, we did it in a 28-0 vote. I'm hopeful that we see similar widespread support for all three of the bills before us today, which were written under some very difficult limitations, but are nevertheless bills that will protect key investments and move us forward. I know the caps in the deal President Biden and Speaker McCarthy struck are not what we would have all preferred, and I've spoken at length about my concerns about how those caps limit our ability to invest in our country's future, and my concerns have not disappeared. But we have a job to do. So here in the Senate, we are moving ahead to make full use of all the resources in the debt ceiling agreement, honor its terms, and write the strongest possible bills while lessening the blow of the cuts and caps, which are tough across the board, and especially on so many of our vital non-defense priorities. We are making clear the Senate is focused on writing serious bills that can actually be signed into law and doing the most we possibly can for people back home. And the three bills that we are voting on today provided much-needed investments in our nation. The legislative branch bill provides crucial resources so we all can continue doing the work of the American people. It ensures the people who protect us and our staffs and our nation's capital and all its visitors have the resources they need. And that includes key resources for the Capitol Police to hire, train, and retain officers. This bill helps Congress stay prepared for threats, including cyber attacks, severe weather, and other emergencies, so that this institution can be fully operational and jump into action at any given moment, especially when a crisis hits. It supports the Government Accountability Office, the Congressional Budget Office, and the Congressional Research Service, which provide the insight and oversight that I think every one of us would agree is crucial to writing effective, evidence-based legislation. It strengthens efforts to support working-class parents on the Hill by taking steps to make childcare more accessible for staff and updating lactation rooms for nursing moms. I happen to think that more moms and more parents should work here in Congress, and this will help that. And it literally helps the architect of the Capitol keep our lights on and the Capitol Police keeping the doors safely open. So I'd like to thank and commend the chair and ranking members, Senators Reid, and Fisher, and the staffs of the subcommittee for their truly excellent work putting together that strong bipartisan bill. We will also consider the Commerce, Justice, Science, and Related Agencies bill, which includes many key investments that keep our country safe and competitive. I cannot overstate how important this bill is to our economy. Investments to strengthen our businesses and communities by connecting them to high-speed internet they need to do just about anything in the 21st century, strengthening our trade partnerships across the world, and keeping our supply chains running smoothly. Investments in NOAA to restore salmon, which are not just a cornerstone of our economy in Washington State, they are a way of life, and investments to maintain our global leadership in science and innovation, from research and development to keep us on top of the technologies of tomorrow, from advanced manufacturing, quantum computing, AI, clean energy, and more, to continuing our legacy of leadership in space by strengthening the Artemis missions to send Americans to the moon. And then there are the investments in law enforcement to protect our families from drug trafficking that is bringing deadly fentanyl into our communities, domestic terrorism, cyber attacks, or white supremacy and the uptick in hate crimes and violent attacks, and to protect our civil rights as well, including the all-important right to vote. This bill includes a significant increase in funding for the Department of Justice's Office on Violence Against Women to prevent violence against women and better support survivors, especially Native women on tribal lands, which has long been a major priority for me and many of us. And it funds the Access to Sexual Assault Nurse Exams program that I work to establish so survivors can get the care they need. We cannot skimp on keeping people safe, and this bill maintains and builds on our investments to do that. So I want to recognize and thank the chair and ranking members, Senators Shaheen and Moran, and the staffs of the subcommittee for the very hard bipartisan work that went into pulling a strong bill together given some of the really tight constraints. And last for today, we have the Financial Services and General Government Bill. This bill is so important because the strength of our country is directly tied to the strength of our economy. And I mean on Main Street, not just on Wall Street. So I'm very glad we're able to support Treasury's critical work, regulating our banks, strengthening our economy, and protecting American workers and savers from paying the price for Wall Street's mistakes. And we also need to protect their nest eggs, which is why this bill includes funding for FTC, which protects Americans from consumer fraud, especially seniors, who, as we all know, are very common targets of criminals, and funding for the program that I established in my bipartisan retirement bill last year to help connect people with retirement accounts from past employers that they are missing. This bill also funds our work enforcing our sanctions against Russia, Iran, drug cartels, and other dangerous actors. And it invests in ensuring we have a capable, responsive, and accountable federal government that delivers for the American people, which includes tackling pressing challenges like the opioid and substance use disorder crisis that is causing so much pain in communities across our country, and why I'm so glad this bill delivers new and much-needed resources for the office responsible for coordinating our federal response to the opioid epidemic. It also provides funding for the new Office of Pandemic Preparedness and Response. I worked very hard to establish this office as part of my bipartisan Prevent Pandemics Act, because it is clear families need us to do better next time a crisis like COVID strikes. So I'm very glad that we've been able to work together to get this off the ground. I really want to commend and thank the chair and ranking members, Senators Van Hollen and Hagerty, and the staffs of the subcommittee for the excellent work to land this bill in a good place, especially given the very tough top-line numbers we're all working with. These three bills provide resources our country and our communities are counting on and keep up critical investments in our competitiveness and future. So let's continue showing the American people how seriously the Senate is taking its job and continue working in a diligent and bipartisan way to pass these bills that can actually become law and that will actually make people's lives better. Let's vote these out of committee with broad bipartisan support, just like we did with our first two bills, and after that, we can keep the ball rolling with the rest of our appropriations bills as well, because we all want to return to regular order. There is absolutely no need for chaos or shutdowns, and no one wants to see a damaging CR that would slash critical programs across the board. So I hope we can continue this progress with a full slate of bipartisan funding bills that make the investments our country needs to succeed, and that we can continue discussing how we lessen the damage of the caps on the defense spending and cuts to our non-defense spending. This process is never easy, and it was never going to be easy this year. But we are moving forward, and I'm grateful to all of my colleagues on both sides for putting in the work to get us here. And now I hope all of you will be with me on these votes so we can ensure, as I've said many times now, that the Senate makes its voice heard and this chamber has its say on how we invest in America's future. Senator Collins.
Thank